Bernhard joining us now. He is the executive director of UNLV's International Gaming Institute. Pretty much the only one of its kind, right?
Yeah, we're the biggest. We have some sister institutions in Macau and around the world that do great work. But yeah, we're big because we're in Las Vegas, right?
That's right.
We're at the University in Las Vegas.
So what do you guys do? What's it all about?
So yeah, we are the world's largest academic institute that studies the global gambling thing, what we're here this week to examine. And so in that role, we're truly international. We typically, over the course of every 12 months, hit 6 continents. And so one week we might be in Ghana working with the government in Africa about good policies to create a healthier industry there. The next week we might be out in Australia testifying on a bill that's going through the Australian Parliament. So it really is, it's a cool job because I get to travel like crazy and engage a world that really fairly quickly has grown into a global industry.
Yeah, and you also teach some pretty cool subjects, I guess we can say.
Yeah,
one of
fun.
them is one of your, I guess, one of the things that you teach there is the sociology, the psychology behind gaming.
We do that.
You literally visit 60 countries in 18 weeks virtually.
Yeah, literally virtually. Yes,
Uh-huh.
So yeah, and the university has the largest gaming management program in the world because of course we do, right? And it's a really strong one. I have wonderful colleagues there. My focus and my research and my life as a professor really is sort of on the casino walls outward. In other words, what is gambling in society, in those societies? In other words, how does this play out if casinos are dropped into, for example, Tokyo? Or what are the impacts of the casinos that now live in South Africa and have very important employment impacts for their sort of growing and shifting economy? So all of those countries, we do visit over the course of 18 weeks. If you're in my class down on Maryland Parkway, not too far from us here, over the course of 18 weeks, we move very quickly because we want to study what is now an international universe of gamblers.
Yeah, interestingly, Tokyo, since you mentioned Tokyo,
Yes.
we were just talking, and you said that's kind of the big prize right now for
Really
some
is.
of the top three of the Sands win MGM to be able to infiltrate Tokyo and start sort of the casino industry
Very much
there,
so. Yeah.
because already they have something called pachinko,
They do.
which you were giving me some stats on that I could not believe.
Mind blowing. Yeah. So in all the U.S., there's, depending on the year, depending on how you count, 800,000 or so slot machines. All of Japan, there are 4.2 million pachinko machines.
So pachinko, for our viewers at home who do not know what that is.
You know all about this.
I know all about
You've been in
pachinko,
these parlors.
because I used to play pachinko even as a kid. I used to
Yeah.
work with my aunt. And they're little like silver balls that come down from a machine.
Yeah.
And they go to all these different spots, and the balls are
The
money.
American audience would know, like Plinko on Price is Right,
Yes,
right, where the sort of
similar,
bounces down,
similar.
right? Like
you turn
it's
you do a
but
knob,
you turn
you
into a
turn a knob.
game, and it becomes a skill game
Yeah.
potentially. And so it is already a gambling country in a sense.
Well, yeah, because everybody plays. I mean,
'Cause everybody plays it, right?
pachinko. It's
Super
everywhere.
popular, right? But what we're seeing in sort of an interesting way, we're sitting right now in what bills itself as the world's largest hotel, the Venetian Palazzo. When you combine it all, somewhere around 7,500 rooms, right? Las Vegas is now exporting these enormous buildings to all of the other continents on the planet. So there are buildings, of course, in Macau that looks exactly like this. There are buildings in Singapore. There are buildings in Seoul. There are buildings in Europe. There are buildings in Chile, all over the planet now. And in much the same way that like Detroit invented this crazy thing called the automobile and then sent it out to a happy world of consumers, that's kind of what Las Vegas is. I mean, it sounds goofy because our export, if you will, are these big, tall buildings. But these are the most expensive buildings in the world now. And Tokyo, Yokohama, Osaka are very interested in sort of joining the tourism economy by using this sort of on-ramp to that world.
And so one of the ways that they're kind of utilizing this is they're saying right now already the constituents in Japan, the people in Japan, are taking tons of money outside of the country and they're going where they can gamble, where they can go to casinos if they don't want to do pachinko, the traditional game there.
One way to think of Japan's tourism situation is Japan has something of a tourism deficit, right? Whereby the Japanese are fantastic global travelers. They go all over the world. They're wonderful travelers, leaving their yen in economies all over the planet. Compared to that amount of money, relatively few people are leaving their rubles, euros, dollars, pesos in Japan, right? Comparatively speaking. And as such, that's a legitimate economic crisis for Japan because Japan crushes it in the industrial world, right? One of the great stories of the industrial economy of the last 100 years, Japan has really been a marvel as it pertains to making stuff. But we're now moving into a post-industrial world where it's not so much about making stuff as it is about making experience, right? And Japan, again, awesome at making stuff, but now we're in a world where basically China is making all of our stuff, right? And China's really sort of the industrial engine, and probably for the foreseeable future. So when that happens, you need to have a good way to go. You need to have an on-ramp into a post-industrial economic world. And tourism is today 10% of the entire world's economy. That means today, 1 out of 10 dollars, rubles, pesos that's spent on planet Earth will be spent on up and moving your butt from one part of the Earth to a totally different part of the Earth via travel, right? That's, for the first time in human history, 10% of what humans spend. And if you don't have a good plan for that, you're really at risk, economically speaking, for the next century or so.
So what are the biggest challenges? Why is it so hard then for these casinos to actually, infiltrate and have like a little foothold there in Japan?
So I actually wrote a doctoral dissertation on this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I want to hear this.
I won't bore you with this, so that nobody has to go look it up and read that god-awful thing. Basically looking at the stigma of gambling still, right? The way in which gambling is still like alcohol, like cigarettes to some degree, one of the sin industries, right? And it suffers, like many industries do, from a NIMBY, a not in my backyard sort of phenomenon, where there are a lot of places that are concerned and primarily about the impacts of gambling and are saying, you know what, not in our backyard. Now, great strides have been made. Organizations like the American Gaming Association, which puts on this great show every year, have done wonders at putting out the story about jobs and the economic benefits and these things. But I think if you were to poll people, again, still on sort of their gut, everybody says gambling is an acceptable form of entertainment, but it still has some stigmas that the industry has to confront, especially in new jurisdictions.
And the irony of this is they don't consider pachinko gambling.
Yeah, in Japan you do have a profound opposition to gambling. And you'll hear in the public policy debates, well, if we bring gambling into Japan, they don't really consider pachinko gambling. It's an amusement. But for those of us that study this thing for a living, it's gambling, right? You can't walk through a pachinko parlor and come out with any other conclusion. And so they've been exposed to gambling. They just don't have buildings like these that, of course, are about much more than gambling, right? We're sitting in a place right now that has a couple of massive showrooms, huge retail space that blows away any mall that existed when I was a kid, right? Amazing restaurants that are far better than the buffets of old. We used to have these 99-cent plate o' plenty buffets that were just a gastronomical disaster, right? And now Las Vegas has these high-end restaurants, high-end hotel rooms, right? Gorgeous convention spaces like the ones we're sitting in. These really are buildings that are some of the world's most complex, right? From an architectural standpoint, from an operational standpoint. Imagine being the CEO of this building. You have to be a CEO, you're not just a CEO of a casino, you're a CEO of a massive hotel, 7,000 plus rooms, right? You're a CEO of a nightclub business because there's the world's highest grossing nightclub just right down a few steps from where we are right now. You have to be a food and beverage king. You have to be a queen of analysis of retail, right? You have to be good at all these different things to be a leader in this industry. And so in some cases, we, of course, at UNLV train students to sometimes go lead these companies. I think people underappreciate the complexity.
We were just talking to the owner of Sands, right? He said before he dies, that's like his big prize. That's what he wants, right?
Certainly Sheldon Adelson, who owns this company, it would be a major accomplishment, right? It is the big prize. I had an economist come in and talk to my class who said to all my 18-year-olds, all right, if you're in this business for 50 years, this will be the biggest opportunity of your career, the Japan opportunity. Now, there's a lot of political back and forth. Japan could decide to, for example, tax it to death, right? But there definitely is that underlying sentiment of this could be big, right? And at the very least, it's the opportunity to participate in one of the world's largest economies with a product that as yet has not been provided in that environment. Now, of course, there are Macau casinos in sort of Central Asia, in Southern Asia. There is Singapore, we have the Philippines, you have places like Saipan in the South Pacific, but there's really not a great North Asia hub for this product yet. And like any company, I mean, McDonald's used to talk this way, right? We have McDonald's in that part of the world, McDonald's in that part of the world. We don't have McDonald's in this part of the world yet, right? That's the way these executives are thinking today about North Asia in particular.
All right. This has been a fascinating conversation. And They didn't have classes like this when I went to school.
I know. I told my students that. You're lucky. I never had a class like this.
I just like to understand the psychology behind some of this stuff.
Yeah, it's fun to think about. It definitely is. Yeah.
All right, great to have you.
Thanks so much.